Brennan Lee Mulligan is the new DM of Critical Role for Campaign 4, and his experience as an improv comic has me floored. If you haven't seen Brennan DM before, you might be shocked by how different he is from Matt Mercer. I've played in loads of games, and I can tell you that no two DMs are alike. That's normal. But there are some tricks I've seen Brennan do that I think are overlooked. Brennan's experience as an improv comedian comes through in moments of levity in the campaign. He can find a way to make almost any scene funny if he wants to. But his experience in improv has given him another gift: the need to keep things moving and always keep things fresh. Almost all improv games that improv comedians play revolve in some way around how to change a scene on the fly to keep it engaging, to keep it interesting. And that's what blows me away about Brennan, how he keeps the scene moving and changing, so we're not stuck meandering around. We're blasting our way forward from interesting story beat to interesting story beat in record time. He wants to keep his players' attention fixed on the task at hand, and he does this through a handful of tricks centered around cutting the scene. Let's break down those tricks. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where I'm too excited about Campaign 4 to not talk about it, but I'll avoid spoiling anything. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for over 10 years. Incredible! One thing I'm sure you've noticed is how Brennan will kind of cut off players by saying, "Incredible!" The incredible is such a powerful tool. It allows you to take back the word without intruding too much on what the players are up to. I mean, this might strike you as odd, but I think it's so brilliant. What he's doing is using the typical talker-listener back and forth, but instead of saying yes or he says incredible or fantastic. And the reason this works is because when you're talking to someone, you half expect them to nod or maybe say yeah, in between your sentences to indicate that they're listening. Well, Brennan does that. But when he wants to move on, he'll say incredible. Usually he'll say it like incredible or fantastic, because that one syllable in or fan feels like a yeah or but then he keeps talking since it's a longer word. It's almost hypnotic, like the way it deconstructs the normal talker-listener back and forth to take the word away from the player and give it back to the DM. Every conversation you've ever had has a game engine in it. The engine being who has the word and whose turn is it to speak. And by saying incredible, he can take the word back so he can say something else. He really only uses this trick when the players have done or said something cool, but he wants to keep the plot moving. The player describes what they do in detail, and nervous it's going to go on forever, Brennan says, incredible. And suddenly we're all listening to Brennan, which is an opportunity for him to keep things moving. Because once he's said it, he now has the word, and he can say the next thing he wants to say. Incredible. You see that Taisha does that, and meanwhile, Hal, you're upstairs with Wick. This is a very effective cut. He doesn't add any flowery language or anything. He lets the players do their cool thing and uses it as an excuse to cut. Of course, Campaign 4 is introducing 13 players to the table, so they have the benefit of a split party, which is great for keeping the plot moving. We made a video on splitting the party where AB coined the now immortal phrase, "Edge your players." What? That's what you're doing! You edge your players. Once you start editing your scenes like this, you can hop between parties to make sure to only show us the interesting bits the party is up to, cutting out all the shoe leather, as Professor DM would call it. Another way to keep it fresh is when a new character enters the scene. Have them explain what they're here for and what they want. Obviously, there's been a lot of this going on in the Campaign 4 Overture, as there's a lot of characters to introduce, both PCs, but also NPCs. I love introducing new characters. I have way too many NPCs because I'm constantly introducing new people to my players. Having someone show up and ask for something, look for something, ask leading questions, it's all good fodder for roleplay. Gets the players wondering, what do they really want? You can always have someone enter and ask questions. Yes, even in a dungeon. My party is currently traveling the wilderness with a guy they found in a dungeon. A new character enters in the dungeon, can be the kobold the party will inevitably adopt. Get ahead of them and give them an adoptable kobold. Or if you don't want to talk more, you hit him with the Orcs Attack. Orcs Attack is the same principle, but instead of a person entering and wanting to talk, it's a bunch of people enter and they want to do some murder. Either trick is good, be it combat or roleplay, when your players are stuck spinning their wheels. A new character, a new combat, or whatever can unstick them from their current mental mess usually means the players realize, oh, We can't solve this right now, so we better move on and take a look at this problem later. And suddenly, the plot wagon is back on the plot road. An unrelated nephew of new character enters and Orcs Attack is the thing happens. Ideally, this is the same basic principle, but it's even more vague. Thing Happens made an iconic appearance in the first episode of the campaign.
Thimble.
And suddenly, a bunch of stuff happened. Now, did Brennan know before the session that a thing happens the moment someone touches the MacGuffin? Or did he figure, we're long ways into this episode and not enough dope stuff has happened yet, so let's hit him with a butt kicker?
Thimble.
I don't know. I'd be interested to find out, but I'm willing to bet that even if it was option A, he's not above option B. You can always just make a thing happen. You're the DM, you're allowed to do that. A freak weather incident, a magic thing just breaks. You can even change the music and your players will start to wonder, what's going on? You've got so many options and you don't even have to add a thing into the scene or cut between groups. You can also keep things moving by cutting in time as well. The most common cut I use is the "you get there," which is just to skip the non-exposition travel segments. Whenever I go online, I see posts from DMs wondering how to make travel interesting, and I've got a whole playlist on making exploration interesting, but that's exploration, and travel isn't exploration. Travel is currently at Hal's house in the Rookery, and we want to go to the hidden flop house to find Thimble. What does Brennan do? He just cuts to the players arriving there. Yeah, he describes the city and district briefly. He describes the house as they arrive, and that's about it. There's no need to make that journey interesting, especially since there are no informed choices along the way. He just says, you get there, but with a bit of descriptive flair. You can be very quick on that cut if you want, or a bit drawn out, depending on if your players have been to these locations before. If you realize that next up for your party is a 6-day journey across a safe road inside the Good Guy Kingdom, you can just say you get there and move on to the interesting parts of the story. If you think there's danger on the road, you can use random encounters or make them find a dungeon along the way, but that's not exploration, that's combat. Anyways, you can cut out long downtime. I often do this in my game as I just say, okay, and then 3 days pass. It's perfectly valid. You don't need to roleplay every moment. You can just cut to the interesting bits. Which brings me neatly on to the Yadda Yadda, a trick I use frequently to just sort of zoom out of the scene and zoom back in later. You continue chatting for a few minutes and then you see, or maybe it's a little bit more like this conversation goes on for a while and then it's getting late. You can always just zoom out and zoom back in. Use the zoom out to indicate to the players that they don't need to go on endlessly. I have a player at my table whose character loves to over-explain things, and it's a hilarious character trait, and it's often crucial for the plot, but on occasion it requires me to step in and zoom out to not subject the players to the same torturous mansplaining the characters are suffering. Or, if a player asks something they've been told now numerous times in character, I might just step in and say, as they said last time, and explain it as the DM briefly to avoid it becoming a whole thing for the second session in a row. My players love just chatting in character, but they also love it when progress is made. So it's an endless dance trying to make sure they get to do both. Before we get to the last couple of tricks, I want to tell you that this video is sponsored by Gravedigger's Harvest, a dark fantasy adventure module for 5th edition. It uses the harvesting and ritual mechanics from Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 and brings it to a specific mystery module set in a spooky town. It's this kind of closed ecosystem with fully illustrated monsters and NPCs, strange cultists. There are new boons and charms, and high quality physical and digital maps. And if you didn't pick up Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 already, you can put it as an add-on when you back the Gravedigger's Harvest Kickstarter. And the best thing about this project is the quick fulfillment plan. If you back Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 and Gravedigger's Harvest, you can bundle those together so they ship to you at the same time. This will save dramatically on shipping and it doesn't delay either order. Gravedigger's Harvest has its own build a grave system and a really intriguing mystery about a town where people die of a respiratory disease by the ripe old age of 53. The Kickstarter just went live, so go check it out by using the link below so they know who sent you. Now back to the video. Another thing I do once in a while, but let's be honest, very rarely, is that I cut to a cutscene the player characters cannot see, but it would be fun for the players to see. Maybe the villains are talking about their plans or something strange happening on the other side of the world, usually a tease for what's to come in the campaign. I'll literally write out a little prose with dialogue and act the whole thing out, but I try to keep it under a minute or two to make sure I'm not hogging the spotlight from the real heroes of the story, the PCs. These scenes I'll usually insert at the start or end of a session, in the rare cases that I do them, but sometimes I prepare a scene or two like this for a session I know runs the risk of being very chatty about topics that don't further the plot. You know, I've got a session coming up and I'm thinking it's really a coin flip whether they just chat all session and get nothing done. At the end, they might feel, disappointed nothing happened, despite themselves spending a lot of time talking endlessly, making sure nothing happened. I might prepare a couple of scenes peppered throughout that I can then just start reading as an excuse to cut away or cut out of a scene or something like that. It can be very evocative of the greater world, but more importantly, I found it useful to keep everyone's eyes on the plot ball. But all that said, cutting also requires permission from the players. Sometimes I'm a little too aggressive with it, and as I describe the cut, a player says, "Can I do one more thing?" And I typically allow it because the players might not know I was about to cut. And their characters certainly don't know that, so they should get to do what they want to do. And usually when a player asks that, they want to do a thing quickly because they understand I was cutting to save time. So most of the time the one more thing is a really good scene because it's brief and to the point. Cutting requires permission from the players. They can stop you if they want to. Remember, you're only DM at the consent of the players. Before my sessions start, I often remind players of tools we use to keep things moving as well. So it's not all just me cutting around, but I remind them to do a few things to help keep the plot moving. To enter scenes late, to leave them early, to avoid talking in circles, and my favorite is now when they want to cut out of a scene, they can give me thumbs up to indicate that they're done with what they wanted to say. When everyone thumbs up, I cut. Anyway, you're the DM and you're here to guide everyone through an enjoyable experience. And as the DM, you can just keep stuff moving. Add new NPCs, monsters, plot hooks, events, cut to a cinematic. You can describe some horrible event or exciting moment or off-screen victory or loss. You can just make things happen and make everyone around the table feel like the plot's really plugging along all of a sudden. And that's kind of the magic of these tricks. When you, the DM, move the plot forward by cutting, you call attention to the plot stagnation, and when you do, the players might notice it. Maybe not all of them, but maybe one or two might. And they'll help you out by keeping things moving from there on out. Maybe they'll help you out because they've got some story muscles that recognize the stagnation, as you call attention to it, but also the players are dilly-dallying too much. You're forced to invent bad stuff to illustrate their own inaction to them. And they might want to hurry up so you can't have more time to punish their inaction. And suddenly they're incentivized in and out of character to keep the plot moving themselves if they want to avoid the catastrophe as you're forced to make up more and more bad stuff to keep the plot moving. Despite these characters' inability to follow plot hooks. So remember how Brennan's instinct is to always keep things moving. How he uses his experience from improv not to inject comedy, although he does do that, but to make sure there is always something going on. It keeps our attention glued to the show, but more importantly, it keeps the attention of his players glued to the game. It forces them to pay attention and be invested. It creates urgency and movement that you only get in well-paced movies or TV shows when we're blasting forward at breakneck speed and there's always something to catch our attention. That doesn't mean it's all plot, no story either, but it means that neither overstays their welcome. If you've never done cutting before, or you've only experimented with it a little, give it a try as a way to keep the pace moving and avoid getting pulled into a trench of endless faffing about. See if it doesn't help pick up the pace at the table and make every minute of game time count. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend. I don't know where she went. If you want to support us directly, consider joining our Patreon, where adept patrons get the Arcane Forge, a system for letting players craft their own magic items, magic armor, and weapons. And if you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.